Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show on Park City Television. We are joined by friends from the YWCA in Utah. I have Amberlie Phillips, the Utah's Chief Development Officer, and Nedra Hotchkins, who's a recipient at this year's Leader Luncheon Outstanding Achievement Award winner. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. So I'm looking at this beautiful invitation for your largest fundraiser that you have tomorrow, the Leadership Luncheon, and I was looking at the goal of the YWCA, dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, and freedom for all. That is quite the mission statement that you have put on your plates. Tell us a little bit about the role you see the WCA in Utah.
Sure. So the YWCA, we've been serving the women and families in Utah for 110 years, and our mission of eliminating racism and empowering women, we've officially had that mission since the 1970s, and like you said, it's a really big mission. And one of the things I love about YWCAs across the country and the world is that each YWCA fulfills their mission a little differently. So here in Utah, we talk about our work in 3 ways, which is safety. We operate the state's largest domestic violence shelter and supportive services for women experiencing domestic violence. Opportunity, which we fulfill through leadership development as well as early education for working families. And then advocacy, which is really public policy work, issue education on behalf of Utah women and their families, paying specific attention to how public policy issues affect women of color.
So you're really looking at the women's rights issues and looking at their success from the broad spectrum. You really hit every stage that could be touched, and that's so important that it's sort of that full spectrum.
We can't do everything, so we do have to focus a little bit. You know, safety is a big deal, of course, for us, and domestic violence. But you know, we really do try to look at how we can advance the well-being of Utah women.
And would you say that domestic violence is your primary? You're used as the primary resource for that?
I mean, definitely domestic violence is our largest program.
Okay.
I mean, domestic violence is a significant issue in Utah. The fact is that 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence in her lifetime. And so, of course, that is a huge issue. There's lots of work to be done and a really great need for our direct services as well as issue education and advocacy.
And so for people who want to get involved, I know there's going to be people local in Park City watching saying, I want to get involved with the organization, and how can I support? Tomorrow, which I think is why you said your voice is almost gone, you have your biggest fundraiser of the year. You're expecting, what, 1,100 to 1,200 people?
Yes, well, 1,100 people right now, but we do have one more day, so we are still accepting reservations. And it really is, I like to call it the best day of the year. It's like Christmas. It's the biggest day for the YWCA because our Leader Luncheon, we've been doing it for 28 years, and it really is a wonderful, amazing celebration of women in our community, the work of the YWCA's mission, as well as bringing in a national keynote speaker, a woman who can really, you know, inform, educate, and inspire the women and men in the room. So it really is an amazing day.
So the Leadership Luncheon, and this is down in Salt Lake at the Grand America
Hotel.
Now, you mentioned the keynote speaker, Brenda Powell. Some Park City people may be familiar with her because she was featured in a 2015 Sundance film called Dreamcatcher, which I know was a huge hit at the Sundance Film Festival. I know you're responsible for choosing the speaker, and I have a feeling this is going to be a good one this year. Tell us a little bit about how you came to Brenda.
So we start looking for our keynote speaker immediately after the one event begins. We immediately
You're
go on
already
the hunt.
planning for the next year.
You know, we really look for people with interesting, inspiring stories, people who have something to say. And I became aware of the film through Geraldine Dreyfus, and she connected me with Brenda, and we just had a few email exchanges. And I thought, you know, her story relates so well to the work of the YWCA, and she has a specific sort of message about sexual violence and young girls and trafficking that feels really relevant right now.
Yes.
And you know, I just thought it would be a really great opportunity to bring her to Utah to speak to a local crowd. So I was really excited.
And for those who may not know, with Brenda, she started her advocacy work in '97, originally from an unfortunate neighborhood in Chicago that age 14 escaped an abusive home and fell into the traumatic world of prostitution that she spent 25 years in.
Yeah.
So I mean, she has an incredibly unique perspective, and to see how far she's come and how well she's doing, I can't imagine a more inspiring person to speak to a group of women in Salt Lake. So fantastic choice. So Nedra, I want to switch over to you because you are one of the recipients of the remarkable achievement at the Leadership Leadership Luncheon. Now, you have received the award for racial injustice.
Yes.
That is your role. Talk to me a little bit about the work that you do.
The work that I do that prompted this award gears from the work of the Village Leadership Bridge program and our Community Village program, as well as the work that I do at the University of Utah with our Women's Enrollment Initiative. And so with the Community Village, it's a program that my husband and I started about 2 years ago here in Salt Lake City after a need of having parents come to us thinking that what do we need to do about racial, that we're not prepared in a sense to educate our children about race. And so we created a curriculum that was based on those racial needs of how to talk to your children when love just isn't enough, not only for adoptive parents, but parents of Black children. And so we've done boot camps all across the valley from St. George to Provo to Salt Lake City in a way to really guide and educate parents regarding Black issues and how to navigate that and how to be advocates for their children. Along that, we do the Village Leadership Bridge program, which is actually a program for self-identifying Black students that we are now in 13 different schools. We've been doing this work for 3 years, and it really is a program designed to help educate Black children around Utah in regards to cultural validation. How do you advocate for yourself? Scholarships where we do field trips, but also a space in a sense of belonging for them, where we want to teach them about how do you give back to your community, how do you become leaders in your community, and what does it mean to be Black in Utah, and understanding that from a very holistic approach. And then my work within the Women's Enrollment Initiative at the University of Utah, which I absolutely love. I've been doing this work for the last 2 years. It's a presidential initiative where we look at how are we retaining and graduating students, and what do we need to do to be more of a resource for students and women students coming into the University of Utah, but also to women in the community, that we want women to obtain higher education, and what we can do to be a part of that. We definitely want to be instrumental in that.
Well, and I can see a theme in terms of cyclical support, that you're starting with young children and making sure that they have a strong sense of self, and their parents instill in them a strong sense of cultural identity.
Absolutely.
And you reach all the way up to adults to make sure that they become strong members of the community, because realistically I know Utah is not known for its diversity.
Right.
And it can, I'm sure, be very isolating. Originally coming from the East Coast, I know that was one of the first things that I noticed when I came here. So I think it's fantastic, and what's most impressive is this is something you just started with your husband.
Yes.
Because you recognized a need.
We recognized a need, but the community also recognized the need. We did not do this work by ourselves. We created a curriculum, and so my husband is Dr. Hotchkins and at the University of Utah. And so when we first started, it was we had someone come to us and say, you know, we recognize you all are doing this work. How do we continue to do this work? And then with the Community Village, we did it as a pilot, and a mother said, hold on, we need some help here. We don't know what we're doing. We need to be able to have a community. And so, you know, growing up, again, it was a community who raised me. It was a community of individuals, not only my individuals in my direct family or immediate family, but a community, and so how important that is. And so we recognize that. And I believe with our Community Village parents that we've created a community for them, and they have now had a support system where they've had parents who otherwise may not connect, are now connecting and talking about issues regarding race that they never would have talked about before as it relates to their children, and being more aware. And how do you validate that and give them the validation and the culture that they need in a space where there's very limited, and talking through them. Again, our boot camps were 1 week to 4 months at one time, right?
Wow.
And so, but they become their own family in their own community, which is what we were hoping to aspire for.
And let me ask you a question just as a sort of an expert insight, because you're right in it. Currently, the racial climate in this country, I haven't seen anything like this in my lifetime, and the level of racial injustice, which is something you're working to fight against, it seems to be at an all-time high. How do you talk to children about this? I mean, you cannot turn on the news without seeing a tragedy, an injustice, and there are so many different voices on so many different sides. How, as a small children, as a parent, you know, of a 5-year-old little boy that can't help but be exposed to some of this, how do you start to have that conversation about why some of these things are happening when, as adults, we don't have the answers?
Well, and I think we do have the answers to some of it, right? I mean, I think it's a bigger picture here, but for me, I think it boils down to the one thing, and that is the way that we see people of color. specifically the fear, if we grew up having biases about people, and where did they stem from? It's not, we're in a climate now more than ever before where race is high, but people are scared to talk about it, and we don't know how to talk about it. I've been very fortunate that I grew up in a family that was really just direct, right? We talked about it, and I work in a space that cultivates those hard conversations, and so I'm very fortunate to have it a part of my everyday life. And as a mother of a 19-year-old black son and of a 13-year-old daughter, I see that, and how do I talk to my son is very different how I have to talk to my daughter.
Right.
How I encourage and advise my white colleagues and the members of the community village of how to talk to their kids, those are very different conversations.
Right.
But I do believe that it boils down to one thing, and that's fear. It's fear and it's racism, and where did those things stem from? A lot of times in our community village, we ask parents, when you see someone, what's the very first thing that comes to your head? What's the very first thing? And usually it's something negative about a person of color, right? So if we're talking about there's a black man, what do you see? Oh, the thug. But you don't know his background, you don't know his education, you don't know where he lives. But something in us have taught us to see people in a certain way. And I believe that comes from fear, that comes from ignorance and lack of knowledge, and it also comes from exposure.
I was going to say
what
exposure
we see.
that goes hand in hand with the ignorance.
Part of when you ask the question, what do we do to educate our children, is that we speak highly. We speak life into situations. In our Village Leadership Bridge program, one of our models that we say is, I see black people positively. I see black people positively. So I have to see myself, but I also have to see them. And I think that they're probably that group of people that when people see them first, that they see them from a negative deficit. And so as a mother of a young child, to all of our children, whether that is, how are you talking about race in your home? And don't shy away from it. It's okay to talk about race. And it's not okay to say, I don't see color. And I always tell people, because if I dropped a box of crayons right here, right now, we see the red from the blue from the green. You see that I'm a black woman, and I want you to see that I'm a black woman.
That's part of who you are.
It's part of who I am, and it's my identity, and I embrace it. But I want people to see that and have conversations about race, the type of books you bring into your home, the way, who are you at, what school are your children going to, who are who are you having play dates with, and the way that we talk about race, and it really is hard, and to understand it, but don't shy away from it, because it is real, and it is the world that we live in. But then how do we move actively forward in thinking about what do we do as people who recognizes that there is a problem, right? That we just don't sit quietly back and just say, oh, that's so unfortunate. You know, are we okay with talking to our groups of friends? Because these are real people's lives, and it affects different people very differently. As someone who's a part of a black community, I have never had the people that we see who from police brutality, I don't necessarily am connected to them through family ties, right?
Right.
But I feel their pain as a mother of a black child.
Well, I was going to say, just as humanity, you see a family going through that.
You see someone going through that, and that is injustice. And so how do we fight collectively to understand that we can't do this work by ourselves? The civil rights era didn't get won because it was only black people who recognized that there was a problem and who got involved. And so when you ask the question is, get involved and understand that racial injustice is not just a person of color problem. It's all of our problem.
It's a cultural problem, and
it
it's
really
definitely
is
a problem in this country. And I think also having those conversations with your child, like you said, don't be afraid to bring it up. Don't be afraid to do it. You're also preparing them to leave Utah, and, to get outside of your bubble, and be successful in a different environment. Let me come back, and what are some of the other women that have been recognized that, aside from the racial injustice, what have they also contributed?
This year, of course, we have Nedra, and then we have 4 other winners. So we are really excited to be honoring Sherry Hayashi in the category of law, Gail Miller in business, Dr. Susan Madsen from UVU in education, and one other whose name is currently escaping me. I knew that would happen.
I can check. I can check on
the. You have the invitation right there.
And Gail Miller.
No, I got. Did you Gail Miller? And Mayor Jackie Biskupski.
It's always the mayor that just
always the mayor just slips on.
Yes,
so Mayor Biskupski.
And all of these recipients are specifically targeting women in terms of their support.
Yeah, so really the Outstanding Achievement Award winners, I mean, they're nominated through a public nomination process, selected by committee, and they're really, their nominations are really about how their work career work, volunteer work really embodies the YWCA mission of, again, empowering women, eliminating racism, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all.
That incredible
So,
mission
yes.
statement that you have. Well, Nedra, tell me the name of your organization again in case people want to get involved or support you in your efforts.
Absolutely. Our K-12 program is the Village Leadership Bridge program, and we also have the Community Village.
The Community Village.
Yes,
What a
and
perfect name.
Thank you.
for that.
Thank you. Yes.
I love it. So if people want to get involved, do you have a website or is there an organization,
We do. It's www.thinkpositionality.com, or you can contact me at nlhutch@gmail.com.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And I couldn't think of a more timely, organization to be honoring and to have someone like you
Thank
being
you.
recognized for the incredible work and much needed work
Yes.
in the community right now. So the luncheon is tomorrow.
Yes.
Are there still tickets available?
There are still tickets available. You can just go to our website, which is ywcautah.org. Buy tickets. There's information about where to go, and we'll get you a good seat.
We'll get you a good seat. And I heard you have a lot of family coming in.
I do.
to support
I
you.
do. I am feeling really excited to be able to have family and friends from all over come in and share in this exciting time. So yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Nedra, Amberlie, thank you so much for being here and for the incredible work that you do specifically as a woman in the community. It's just a wonderful organization, and I know you'll have a successful event tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We'll be right back on the Mountain Morning Show right here on Park City Television.